Hey guys, tonight we slip through the twilight hugging Chicago's lakefront in 1893, shoes crunching on gravel still warm from an afternoon sun that finally clocked out. Peach and lilac streak the lagoon, and a lone cornet overshoots its top note like a pigeon missing its perch. You breathe in fried dough, fresh lumber and the faint ozone tang of those newfangled arc lamps, each sizzling filament promising light, and, if rumor is right, the occasional free mosquito cremation. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what the clock says on your nightstand. Now, dim the lights, maybe fluff your pillows, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pass beneath the administration building's glowing arch, joining the slow drift toward the turnstiles. Vacationing clerks, top-hatted investors calculating popcorn profit margins, farmers in Sunday denim, and one grandmother convinced electricity is bottled lightning waiting to escape. Officials boast that 33 nations have erected pavilions to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Columbus's voyage, a convenient pretext for the grandest carnival Earth has seen. The ticket taker removes half your stub and most of your dignity in one practiced rip. 50 pricey cents vanish, about the cost of a stout pair of socks, or, rumour insists, 6 lunches at Mrs. O'Leary's boarding house, though historians still argue whether her servings were meals or merely structured apologies for the Great Fire. Either way, you're in, and the collective exhale around you feels like everyone bracing for a magic trick. Ahead, the Grand Basin glitters. Towering statues shimmer on its black water like gossip too excited to stay quiet. In her boat, Daniel Chester French's snowy Columbia raises a torch and silently grades your posture. You square your shoulders, then hunch again when a lake breeze slips down your collar. A boy behind you whispers, "It's brighter than daytime!" He isn't wrong. The fair burns through more electric bulbs each night than some states own in total. Past the agricultural building, prize pumpkins lounge like smug orange armchairs. A vendor touts puffed wheat, grains exploded by pressurized steam cannon. You buy a cone, and rogue kernels leap out like acrobats each time you inhale. Quirky, yes. Delicious, debatably. He claims it's the future of breakfast, but he's really selling air at a markup of roughly infinity. Beyond the Court of Honor, the Midway Plaisance thumps. Cairo Street jingles with belly dancer cymbals, while the German village offers sauerkraut dense enough to qualify as building material. You collect fragments of languages and promises of miracle chewing gum. A brass band on the wooded island strikes up a jaunty tune. You recognize the freshly minted Liberty Bell March by John Philip Sousa, premiered at this fair only weeks ago. Cymbals shimmer across the water, mixing with gull cries and distant girder groans. The piece will one day underscore a famous comedy troupe of foot soldiers, but tonight it's simply the heartbeat of progress, each note nudging you closer to the wheel. At last, behind Machinery Hall, a steel halo rises. George Washington Gale Ferris Jr.'s answer to the Eiffel Tower. Each gondola is the size of a railway carriage, ready to lift 60 riders into air scented with sawdust and roast coffee. Part of you wonders if this marvel is progress or just an expensive way to test gravity's warranty. Kerosene lanterns line the approach ramp. Wooden planks, still warm, soften your footsteps. Under the wheel's shadow, voices shrink to cathedral hush. When a mustached gentleman insists you can see all the way to Milwaukee from the top. Useful if you've misplaced an entire city and need to verify its location. Steam engines nearby thrum, rattling your ribs. On the South Pond, fireworks shaped like chrysanthemums burst and fade like wishes changing wardrobes. You linger, letting stray sparks paint temporary freckles on the night, then step closer until iron spokes fill your peripheral vision. Tomorrow the papers will marvel that more than 2,000 passengers can ride at once, but tonight the queue is blissfully short. You pause a heartbeat from boarding and glance back over the Court of Honor. Marble facades blur into a single cream-coloured dream, each cornice traced in incandescence. The fair has rearranged the geography of your evening. Everything familiar sits outside the gates, invisible. Inside, invention and spectacle spin on their own axis. inviting you to step through a door in the sky and discover whether wonder tastes different at 300 feet. With a final adjustment of your hat, you'd like it to arrive at altitude the same shape it left the ground. You steady your breath. The wheel groans, readying. A clock somewhere chimes 8, its metallic echo skipping across the lagoon. The gondola's lattice door slides open. You plant one foot on the threshold and feel your heartbeat sync with the distant hum of nations gathered to see what dreams look like when they spin against a summer night. The queue ripples forward in lazy spurts, and you shuffle along wooden planking just rough enough to remind you socks were not engineered for marathon loitering. Ahead, the ticket booth glows with twin kerosene lanterns, their flames wobbling like shy dancers dodging each gust from the lake. Every 8 seconds, someone tries to calculate how high they'll climb. Every 9 seconds, someone else swears this entire contraption was held together with leftover barbed wire staples from Kansas cattle fences, though historians still argue whether Ferris sourced his bolts from the same Pittsburgh mill that forged the Brooklyn Bridge cables. A boy behind you clutches a folding map of the fairgrounds, its corners feathered like pages of a hymn book gone rogue. He's pointing to the Ferris wheel diagram, boasting to his sister that each car holds 60 passengers and that a full rotation lasts 20 minutes. One to load, one to unload, and one to confess to any higher power you fancy in between. You nod politely, but your private math whispers that if each car weighs 13 tons empty and double that with passengers, then gravity's tab tonight must be astronomical. Better not tell the Treasury accountants. An elderly man wearing a linen cap sidles up, brandishing a pocket compass that keeps spinning north toward the confectionery stand. He chuckles that magnetism here is as tipsy as the crowd at the Anheuser-Busch Pavilion. Wheels pulling the needle, he insists, though you suspect the fudge samples he accepted earlier are pulling him. It's a harmless theory, filed mentally beside that earlier joke about lightning mosquitoes. Still, it sparks lively debate among those close enough to eavesdrop. One woman claims the constant rotation will draw the moon a smidge closer. Somebody counters that if the moon wanted to attend the fair, it could flash its celestial press pass without mechanical assistance. Closer now, you catch murmurs about insurance. The ride cost a daring 50 cents, half a day's wage for many, but rumour hints at a free cotton candy coupon printed on the reverse side, sort of a sugary life insurance payout should your cradle-to-cloud experiment meet an abrupt conclusion. You flip your stub. No coupon, just an ornate engraving of the wheel and the promise of 2 revolutions, rain or shine. The fine print never mentions wind, snow, or existential dread, perhaps an oversight by the legal team still recovering from the chili sauce samples near the horticulture building. Someone within earshot recounts last week's sensation when Buffalo Bill Cody rode a full loop in fringed buckskin, tipping his wide-brim hat each time the car passed ground level. The retelling grows taller than his legend. By version 3, Bill supposedly roped a support beam. By version 4, he lassoed an unfortunate seagull. Mid-queue chatter tilts conspiratorial when talk turns to structural safety. A clerk from Milwaukee claims he saw workers hammering extra rivets this very morning. Evidence, he says, that the wheel is still finding itself, like a college freshman dabbling in philosophy. A rival cynic insists the engineers simply wanted to keep souvenir hunters from prying out bolts as keepsakes. Apparently someone already tried to pocket a washer the size of a saucer. Your contribution is a friendly shrug, but inside you hope any washers remaining tonight are exactly where Mr. Ferris left them. A soft pop echoes overhead, and fireworks bloom faintly beyond the fisheries building. Violet chrysanthemums followed by orange palms, previewing the sky's eventual confession of stars. The flare's reflection skips across the Midway Lagoon and lands on a vendor weaving through the crowd, balancing a tray of chocolate-covered popcorn. You accept a paper cone, and it proves so sticky you unintentionally glue your thumb and index finger into a temporary alliance. When you realize it's the most committed relationship you've sustained all summer. While you unpeel sugary strings, the conversation ahead shifts to numbers. 2,000 horses transported supplies, 27 million visitors expected, and a record-breaking 1.5 million incandescent bulbs illuminating the White City. Mainstream fact slides gracefully into discussion. Those bulbs drink more electricity each night than some rural states draw in a month. courtesy of 24 steam-powered generators rumbling near the fair's machinery hall. The data sparks mild debate about whether all this progress simply brightens the world. Finally, the booth's tin counter stands only a dozen paces away. The attendant wears an immaculate waistcoat, studded with brass buttons that catch lantern light like tiny suns. He stamps each ticket with brisk authority, flicking the lever of a heavy cast-iron data that thunks loud enough to rattle your tibia. When your turn comes, he offers a practiced half smile, less "welcome aboard" and more "next experiment, please." You slide your 50-cent icon under the grill, he punches it, and your receipt emerges scented faintly of ink, carbon paper, and unapologetic capitalism. A nearby sign reminds all riders to remain seated, refrain from smoking, and avoid flinging anything overboard. Especially, one scribbled addendum warns, ham sandwiches, suggesting someone's earlier lunch took flight like a meaty meteor, aimed at unsuspecting strollers. Quirky tidbit secured, you tuck your sandwich deeper into your picnic basket, silently promising to be a model passenger. The lattice gate yawns open at the platform's far end, and the first evening car empties with giggles, pale knuckles gradually pinking. The line buckles forward again, and you find yourself toe-to-toe with a brass rail polished smoother than a politician's promise. A uniformed attendant, cap tilted, moustache waxed into punctuation, slides the lattice door aside with a clang that feels like a starting pistol for your nerves. You duck into the gondola, boots thudding on oiled pine slats, and catch that first gentle sway, a lullaby performed by steel and evening breeze. The cabin is roomy enough to host a modest town meeting, 36 feet long, upholstered benches along each wall, and a tiny coal stove boxed safely in one corner for winter rides Chicago swears will never happen again. You take a spot near a paned window, already fogging with eager breath, picnic basket nestled by your knee like a well-trained terrier. Across from you plops a lady clutching a tower of hatboxes. Beside her, a bespectacled accountant unfolds a starched napkin with the solemnity of a church usher. Strangers a moment ago, supper companions by altitude's decree. The attendant tips his cap. Remain seated, no lighting cigars, and please don't attempt to milk the view for spare change, he deadpans. The door rattles shut, bolts sliding home. When a teen behind you whispers that the gondola's plaque, capacity 60, is less a limit and more a dare, you decide to keep that observation off your evening exercise log. Outside, hydraulic brakes hiss, and the wheel lurches a deliberate inch. Iron teeth engage a hidden cog the size of a bungalow. Mainstream fact glides in. This is the first ride on Earth to use a double-track roller-bearing system. 2 rings of 14-foot spindles turning so smoothly you could balance a teacup on the axle at full speed, or so the engineers brag between gulps of black coffee. Inside, benches squeak as riders redistribute bravery. The accountant, eager for distraction, produces a hard-boiled egg the exact color of moonlight and offers half. You accept, discovering he's peppered the yolk with ground cloves for digestion. When your first bite tastes like Christmas and confusion holding hands, you chew politely, promising yourself this will never reach your future cookbook. Through the window, midway torches recoil into shrinking dots as the wheel lifts you clear of the loading platform. The lagoon's surface flattens into a smoked glass mirror, reflecting every bulb that hems the court of honor. Boats drift below, their passengers suddenly miniature, tin soldiers rowing across a jewelry box lake. A soft gasp ripples through the cabin, followed by the unmistakable crunch of someone opening celery sticks, much louder than physics normally allows. You turn toward a mahogany plaque listing designer George Ferris's statistics: 264 feet tall, 36 cars, 2 steam engines chugging 1,000 horsepower combined. Someone wonders aloud whether the engines can read minds. They slow perceptibly, each time nerves spike. Historians still argue whether Ferris chose steam over electric drive to showcase American industry, or simply because he trusted pistons more than newly tamed electrons. Either way, the debate hums like a second engine tucked beneath the floorboards. The lady with the hatboxes retrieves a silver flask, not spirits but chilled raspberry shrub, she clarifies, perfect for staving off air sickness. She offers a sip. It tastes tart, fizzy, and faintly virtuous, as though berries attended finishing school. She reveals the quirky tidbit that earlier in the fair, a Chicago social club served a 7-course dinner right inside this very car, complete with crystal, candelabras, and one unfortunate soup tureen that obeyed gravity with too much enthusiasm during a gusty pivot. The tureen survived, the tablecloth less so. The wheel pauses to load the next car beneath you, leaving the cabin swaying like a cradle rocked by an impatient aunt. Wind fingers through roof vents, carrying distant calliope notes and the smoky perfume of charcoal-grilled oysters from the fisheries building. A gentleman removes his pocket watch, squints, and announces that sunset officially ended 7 minutes ago. Twilight, therefore, is on borrowed time, much like his watch, won last night in a suspiciously lucky ring-toss game. As he insists, the watch's ticking now syncs with the wheel's turns. Proof, he claims, of cosmic approval. Motion resumes. You inch higher, horizon peeling open. Lake Michigan unfurls to the east, black velvet sprinkled with copper reflections. To the west, Chicago's gas lamps twinkle, sketching boulevards that someday will host roaring automobiles, though tonight they host mostly stray dogs debating territorial rights. Far below, Sousa's band crescendos, all brass daring fireworks to keep up. The sound reaches you, diluted but triumphant, like victory filtered through silk curtains. The accountant fishes a newspaper clipping from his breast pocket. Yesterday's Tribune applauded Ferris for challenging French dominance of tower bragging rights. Beneath the fold, a column fretted that strong winds might turn the wheel into a rotary kite. You both peer through glass at spokes thick enough to shame medieval portcullises, and laugh. If this is a kite, some child above must be exceptionally strong. Mid-rotation, the car levels with the agricultural building's cherub-topped cornucopias, allowing you eye-to-eye communion with plaster angels brandishing wheat sheaves like victorious chefs. For one breath-held moment, you feel undeniably taller than your mortgage, your laundry list, and that unfinished letter to Aunt Hester. Strange how altitude edits priorities. The wheel stops again. More loading below, more rocking here. You remove cold fried chicken from the basket, its aroma instantly notarizing you as most popular roommate in the sky. Sharing ensues. Drumsticks traded for pimento cheese sandwiches. Lemonade swapped for ginger cookies. Conversation expands to weather, to which states claim best apples, and whether this Ferris fellow might next design a spinning hotel, so guests can watch sunrise from every compass point without leaving bed. You silently approve. Anything to reduce checkout lines. A whistle shrills, steam vents, and the ride resumes. You feel the axle's deep gut growl transmitted up the stanchions into your seat bones, mechanical thunder rendered intimate. The city continues shrinking until grid lines dissolve, leaving only constellations of street lamps, mirrored by the actual constellations now pricking the midnight blue canopy above. A gentle jolt announces the end of your first climb. The wheel coasts into steady revolution. Below, the platform crew appears as clockwork dolls exchanging tiny tickets. Above, nothing but wind choreography, and the kind of silence that's not truly silent, merely pausing to listen to its own heartbeat. You exhale, anchoring in the shared stillness of strangers become supper allies, and taste clove-dusted yolk lingering like a question mark on your tongue. Momentum settles into a candle-slow climb, and with each groan of riveted spokes, you feel the gondola slipping its earthly leash. The midway below stops, looking like streets, and begins pretending it's a jewelry box flung open under moonlight. Amber arcs of gas lamps, diamond pinpricks of Edison bulbs, all stitched by ribbon-thin shadows of footbridges. An invisible elevator in your chest rises too, that floating sensation your stomach files as "please define gravity," even as a hush drapes itself over your cabin mates. At 3-story height, you spot the fisheries building's rooftop aquarium windows, flashing sapphire, then emerald, then amethyst, as underwater spotlights coax trout into reluctant celebrities. A snack vendor on the promenade flips taffy in such slow motion it seems the world has nudged its playback dial to dreamy. When you wonder if the taffy's stretching or simply waving goodbye to its calorie count before entering someone's pocket. Wind freshens through the vents, scented like lake mist, spiced with distant coal smoke from machinery boilers. The accountant's paper napkin surrenders to a gust, spiraling up until it pins itself on the stovepipe hat of a gentleman in the next gondola, an unsolicited fashion garnish that earns your first laugh from altitude. Below, those same hats and parasols have shrunk to dashes and commas in a living sentence that spells, you are leaving the paragraph called ground. Halfway to the zenith, a mechanical clack marks transition from hoist to glide. The wheel no longer pulls, it permits. You sense the difference the way a boat's motor dims just before sail is raised. Same forward motion, but with quiet permission from physics. Mainstream fact alights here. The Ferris wheel's massive 89,320-pound axle is the largest single forged piece of steel produced in America to date, shipped in 2 parts by rail from Pittsburgh and assembled on site with cranes that made local stevedores whistle appreciatively and quietly wonder about the day someone decides to hoist an entire building just because they can. Partners in picnic resume their gentle rustle. Someone unwraps fudge squares, and aroma of melted cocoa floats across the cabin. A lady comments that chocolate is a mood soother recommended by her physician, clearly a prescient man ahead of his time. You accept a tiny square. It liquefies on your tongue in ways that ask you to schedule 2 extra laps around Jackson Park tomorrow. Dieting? The fair has other plans. Every new vista seems to come with its own sugar tax. Electric constellations bloom brighter, each yard upward. Chicago's street grid stretches west like a glowing tartan. The white city's neoclassical facades shine pearl white under arc lamps, so intense they banish night into reluctant corners. Somewhere down there, Nikola Tesla's alternating current generators, championed by Westinghouse, thrum inside a brick powerhouse, proving that electricity can travel far and still behave. Historians still argue whether this public triumph, or the earlier Niagara contracts, truly sealed AC's dominance. But up here, the debate feels as distant as the shore of Indiana, a faint ink smear across the lake. The wheel pauses again, loading below. But your car now sits high enough that conversations turn whisper soft, as though volume might tilt the gondola. You press palm against glass. It's cool, trembling with miniature storms of vibration that pulse from axle to pane. Outside, a seagull flutters briefly alongside, wing beats matching the rhythm of your heartbeat before it slides away into darkness, unimpressed by human engineering. Quirky tidbit time. One passenger recalls the Japanese village booth selling self-inflating pillows, rubber bladders that expand when warmed by body heat. Another claims the product doubles as a discreet life preserver for steamboat travel. You picture yourself wearing one beneath a waistcoat. Fashion meets flotation, and vow to investigate later, provided you can sneak past mechanical chess automatons that keep challenging fairgoers to humiliating draws. The voice of Sousa's band drifts again, this time carrying the fresh-pressed High School Cadets March. Brass and woodwinds mingle with a low whistle from the wheel's steam vent, an accidental duet that would cost a fortune to replicate in any concert hall. When your brain suggests that if each musical note were a pastry, Chicago would be out of flour by dawn. A moon as clean and pale as porcelain glides above, nudging aside clouds like a butler arranging curtains. Its reflection pools in the Grand Basin, where gondolas, carved to resemble Venetian skiffs, slide under arching bridges. Candle lanterns bob on their prows, and you realize those tiny flames down there could be snuffed by a careless breath. Yet up here, every worry is moth small. 3/4 up, the cityscape bends into gentle curvature. You can almost believe Earth is a gumball being inspected for shine. The accountant announces you've reached approximately 200 feet, equal to stacking 45 draft horses nose to tail. No one questions his math. It feels politely accurate, and the image earns a muted chuckle. The cabin sways, benches murmuring like old knees. Conversation turns to the women's building, designed by architect Sophia Hayden, first of its kind, staffed entirely by female curators. Some debate whether such segregation elevates or limits recognition. The phrase hangs, unanswered, until the lady with hatboxes nods that visibility, darling, is sometimes its own revolution. Her bon mot is punctuated by the wheel's resumed motion, as though machinery itself applauds. With a gentle clatter when a man confesses he packed his picnic in a newly invented tin lunch pail shaped like a brick so he can drop it accidentally on purpose at home construction sites and watch workers scramble for free building material. Your eyebrows arch. He winks, promising it's only a thought experiment, so far. As the car crests its summit, 264 feet and an extra hair of bragging rights, you find night air fresher, almost alpine, cooled by nothing but curiosity and open sky. Chicago is a music box below, its lid raised for inspection. The pulse at your throat steadies. The fried chicken, the clove egg, the fudge, all settle into amicable armistice. For 30 heartbeats, wheel and city balance perfectly, ingenuity spinning over ambition, light floating over dark water. You balanced between awe and the slight worry you forgot to lock your boarding house door. Then the car begins its gentle descent, trading altitude for new angles of wonder. But the glow stays with you, inside eyelids, behind ribs, in every pocket where apprehension once lived. You lean back, exhale a silent thank you to steel workers, electricians and pastry chefs alike. The fair keeps spinning, and so do you, both determined to show the cosmos that progress can taste like sugar and feel like flight. Halfway through the second smoother rotation, the gondola settles into what feels like a floating veranda, and you finally declare it picnic o'clock. A careful click of the wicker latch releases aromas of cold fried chicken, lemon zest and the faint nostalgia of yesterday's cinnamon. You spread a gingham cloth across your knees, call it optimism, though a private voice reminds you the cloth is more parachute for crumbs than safety net for drumsticks. Somewhere below, Sousa's band finishes a flourish, the cymbal crash arriving a heartbeat late, like applause plucking at your ankles. With the cabin angled just so, the midway plaisance yawns beneath you, like a light-strung corridor in a dream. Tiny figures wheel miniature cannons, practice saber drills, and, directly under your soon-to-be lunch zone, an entire marching band parades in buttoned wool, tinny trumpets tidily aligned. They appear no larger than beetles, yet you feel a ridiculous obligation not to pepper them with biscuit debris. As you picture their conductor fending off falling breadcrumbs with the dignity of a man keeping rain off a Stradivarius, you lift the chicken, its skin still crisp, thanks to yesterday's lard bath. When you bite, it crackles like distant fireworks, and pepper flakes pop against your tongue. The accountant opposite you approves with a solemn nod. Culinary dividends are being paid. He unwraps his own contribution, sliced apples dusted in nutmeg. Debuted right down there, he says, pointing toward the agriculture building. By a company testing cold storage rail cars. Mainstream fact delivered. The exposition boasts an entire refrigerated transport display, convincing farmers nationwide that their peaches could survive Montana in January. Assuming the peaches don't elope first, the lady of hatboxes waves a linen fan to shoo crumb-seeking spirits. Between gestures, she shares a quirky tidbit. A German brewer on the grounds offers tiny medals, stamped blue ribbon, to any passerby willing to pronounce Pabst without tripping over the consonants. She's earned 2 already, one for herself, one for her milliner. Proof you can collect trophies simply for having a nimble tongue and time to queue for lager. Far below, the bug-sized band strikes the opening bars of Stars and Stripes Forever, though foresters on the horizon might swear it's a mosquito hum. Brass notes waft up, weaving through vents and curling around lemonade you've just uncorked. A fizz announces citric mischief as bubbles crowd the bottleneck like theatre-goers racing for best balcony seats. When the accountant warns you to sip carefully, last week a gentleman with a heroic moustache erupted lemonade onto the cabin ceiling, creating the fair's first documented citrus rain cloud. You pass the bottle anyway. The liquid hits tongue like lightning wearing velvet gloves, sharp, sweet, and gone too fast. Beneath the fair's electric jewelry blinks Morse code at heaven, begging for an encore. Kerosene flares on the promenade flicker in time, and you remember that moonlit gull from earlier. Envious no bird store sells fried chicken in the clouds. Conversation turns speculative. What exhibition could possibly top this mechanical colossus? Someone suggests a ship that crosses oceans on stilts. Another imagines underground trolleys, powered by moonbeams. Historians still argue whether Chicago's daring spirit here truly seeded the subway revolution, or merely nudged inventions already steaming along in London. But from your perch, the debate feels as hypothetical as a pigeon voting for mayor. Though in this city, you concede, nothing is impossible. Your fingers find the picnic basket's hidden pocket, cloth napkins embroidered with tiny Ferris wheels your landlady stitched as travel blessing. You distribute them like micro-souvenirs. The teen from earlier, now gnawing thoughtfully on a wing, suggests dropping one napkin overboard as a message in a bottle, without the bottle. You veto the plan on behalf of marching band morale, when he counters that a napkin parachuting down would simply announce, "Warning, chicken may proceed." Wind backs off. The cabin levels. You notice how every voice has softened, sentences stretching like taffy under the lull of altitude. Even the hatbox's lady lowers her fan, eyes glimmering with that reflective glaze people wear when processing more wonder than muscle memory can store. Across the lake, steam whistles from a night freight echo, reminding you that elsewhere, someone is stoking a firebox instead of nibbling crust in the clouds. Chewing pauses as the accountant unfurls a tiny pamphlet advertising an exhibit you missed. The kinetograph, moving pictures displayed by electricity. Crowds apparently pay a nickel to watch a black and white train barrel toward them, passengers ducking instinctively. He plans to visit tomorrow if his courage regenerates. You tuck that prospect away. Amused the exhibit sits mere yards from where actual trains deliver lumber daily, but the ghostly on-screen locomotives garner louder screams. The wheel halts again, gentle sway, suggesting a hammock anchored to gravity's lenient cousin. You crane your neck. The platform you boarded has rotated out of sight, replaced by the roof of the mines and mining building, glittering with ore samples arranged like confectionery jewels. A solemn hush blankets the cabin, broken by the accountant's bright observation that the mines pavilion awarded a silver medal to asphalt for its exceptional suitability in keeping ladies' shoes unsoiled. Practicality wins pageants here, you think, as you lick salt from your thumb. Picnic wind-down proceeds. Chicken bones wrapped, crumbs corralled, lemonade corked. You pass penny peppermint lozenges for respectful breath, though the lake air has already chilled fried aromas into polite memories. Somewhere beneath, those miniature musicians finish parading. Cymbals shimmer, and the conductor folds his baton with bedtime reverence. You vow to applaud later by visiting their freshly printed souvenir sheet music, priced a penny a page. The gondola begins moving once more. Downward now, though speed remains unhurried, as if the wheel respects digestion schedules. Lights that moments ago resembled constellations resume masquerading as buildings, and the ground rehearses its long-awaited reunion with your souls. You lean back, palms on warm wicker, and catalogue the tally of firsts. First rooftop lake breeze tasted, first band observed from migratory bird altitude, first chicken crumb feared as aerial weapon. Pockets now ring faintly with medal ribbons and candy wrappers, tangible proof that novelty can be packaged, eaten and worn all before bedtime. As benches sigh beneath shifting weight, You spot the boy's map, folded into a crude paper airplane. He hesitates, eyes darting to you. This time you nod. Permission to launch, but only after the cabin doors reopen near Earth. He grins, pocketing his plan, because even a ride flirting with heaven must mind its manners on the descent. Scene by scene, footlights brighten, bandstands quiet, and somewhere beyond the fair's fence, everyday Chicago is yawning. For now, though, you and your impromptu supper club float on, bellies full, spirits lighter, and a moon that seems closer, not because it moved, but because you did. The gondola eases into its highest cruising arc, and the midway plaisance rolls beneath you, like a carnival ribbon, unspooling straight to the horizon. A warm downdraft brings faint cymbal jingles, oud strums, and the oily puff-puff of coal engines, all braided together into a single improbable lullaby. You press forehead to glass, letting the cool pane frame a panorama of cultural pageantry and, let's be honest, premium people watching. If Section 5 was dinner on a porch, Section 6 is dessert delivered on a silver cloud. Cairo Street appears first, a sliver of North Africa carved into Illinois prairie soil. From your bird's-eye perch, the rooftops look like biscuit tins, each capped with a tiny onion dome. A circle of belly dancers saunters through lamplight, gold coins flashing, chiffon sleeves fluttering, while an American tourist in plaid suspenders attempts to mimic their hip roll. When his suspenders lose the argument with gravity, pinging his shoulders like startled banjo strings, the dancers politely pretend not to notice, but their ankle bells jingle an extra giggle. Just beyond, the Moorish palace glitters in electric illumination, its arches embroidered with 30,000 coloured bulbs, an audacious power bill Ferris himself might admire. Mainstream fact glides in. The fair's electrical grid consumes enough current nightly to light every street in Buffalo, and Thomas Edison's General Electric bid actually lost the contract to Westinghouse's AC system, a victory alternating current boosters still toast. Down below, vendors hawk phosphorescent postcards that sponge up lamplight so recipients can enjoy a faint afterglow long after bedtime. Victorian glow-in-the-dark kitsch, irresistible at 2 cents apiece. The wheel pivots, and the transportation building swings into view, its gilded golden door winking so fiercely you instinctively squint. Plumes of steam billow from demo engines inside, locomotives posed like peacocks with polished brass and exaggerated smokestacks. Historians still argue whether those puffing showpieces were mainly status symbols or genuine testing beds for long-haul efficiency. Yet the hiss that reaches your gondola feels self-important enough to answer both sides of the debate. A thud behind draws your attention. The boy from earlier has unfolded his map again, this time using it as a homemade viewfinder. He aligns Cairo Street perfectly in the cutout, declares it the best tiny opera I've seen, then scissors over to the next vignette, Hagenbeck's Menagerie. From up here, the animal pens form neat rectangles, but a sudden trumpet-like roar rises, letting you know an elephant still believes itself bigger than any geometry. The accountant chuckles that each elephant goes through 16 quarts of oatmeal daily, a fact delivered so matter-of-fact, you half expect a line cook pachyderm ladling porridge backstage. Wind nosing through the roof vent carries something sweeter than coal, burnt sugar, vanilla, the ghost of cinnamon. You scan until you find its parent, the gigantic German coffee cake baking in the baker's plaza, reputedly large enough to feed 2,000 hungry fairgoers, or one perpetually peckish teenage boy given a long weekend and laissez-faire guardians. Just imagining it makes your lemonade feel like a mere palate cleanser. You note the cake's address for future midnight quests. The gondola rocks forward, granting a moving picture glance at the Plaissance's animatronic panorama tent. Painted canvases roll over spools while hidden lanterns mimic sunrise on the Alps, ocean storms, even the 1530 siege of Vienna. In 20 minutes you can travel centuries without leaving your folding chair. Quirky tidbit unfurls when your hatbox companion recalls yesterday's show breaking because a stagehand fell asleep on the crank, leaving a pastoral Swiss meadow splashed with sudden cannon fire. The audience applauded anyway, assuming metaphor. Art sometimes gets lucky. Farther west, the moving sidewalk arcs along the pier, an 1,800-foot conveyor gently schlepping tired feet over Lake Michigan. You watch silhouettes step aboard, stand motionless, and glide like polite ghosts towards seafood suppers. It is the world's first transportation belt, open to the public. Ticket sellers claim you can stroll or sit, but most riders simply gape at the marvel of going nowhere, in the laziest possible fashion. Historians still argue whether this walkway was a genuine prototype for urban transit, or a brilliant excuse to sell lakeshore lemonade, yet its polished oak slats gleam convincingly futuristic under moonlight. Your gondola pauses again, loading below, and for a blissful moment the entire plaisance seems to balance on silence. Then, as though cued by invisible maestro, drums from the Dahomey village erupt, rolling across midway tents like distant thunder. Performers demonstrate spear dances that attract crowds standing 2-3 rows deep. Critics argue about authenticity, but tonight the rhythm merely sinks into your bones and knocks politely, asking if you'd care to dance above the clouds. You decline. Floor space up here is competitive, but your toes drum the bench anyway. Conversation resumes when the accountant reveals his souvenir stash, a palm-sized phonograph cylinder recorded earlier at the Edison Pavilion, containing a tinny rendition of After the Ball. He jokes that one day families will own hundreds of these waxy noodles and argue over who scratched whose favourite march. You make a mental note to invest in earplugs of the future. Below, a whistle shrieks. The coal locomotive inside the machinery annex chugs forward 6 feet to demonstrate its power, then obligingly reverses. Its progress pantomiming itself, and yet the audience bursts into applause as though the engine wrote poetry. When you consider that future commuters will curse such machines for tardiness, never guessing they once received ovations for moving the length of a dining table. A flicker of violet arcs across the lagoon, high-voltage sparks from Tesla's polyphase demonstration in the electricity building. The violet coils dance like captive lightning, seeking loopholes in its contract. Your cabin mates ooh, each convinced they witnessed something both epoch-making and slightly mischievous, like catching Prometheus red-handed. As the wheel eases out of its pause, you feel the gondola dip toward a new quadrant of coaster-slow revelation. You've toured continents in minutes, Egyptian spice stands, Javanese gamelan orchestras, a Franco-Prussian pastry duel you glimpse beyond Machinery Hall, where chefs pipe rival flags onto eclairs. The midway is less a lane than a shuffle playlist of curiosities set to random, and from up here, every curiosity invites you to lean in without spilling lemonade. Lights wink in synchronized patterns now as electrical engineers test a ripple sequence designed to mimic shooting stars. For spectators below, it's a charming illusion. For you, it's a private meteor shower that requires no wish, because in this moment you genuinely lack nothing, except perhaps a slice of that German coffee cake. The breeze freshens again. Lanterns along the rim of Cairo Street shimmer like fireflies debating geography. Your gondola's shadow, once a hulking oval on fairgrounds, now kisses the rooftops, growing smaller with each measured descent. Slowly, the dancers regain human size, engines reclaim roar, and the cotton candy smell thickens into its sticky promise. But you bring a new currency back to ground, the memory of a world that momentarily shrank to marble toy scale, and the delicious certainty you've watched history rehearse its encore from a seat the size of sunrise. Another gust pushes warm notes up to you, this time from a smaller ensemble near Machinery Hall. Their repertoire? Waltzes mellow enough to stir honey, polkas brisk enough to shuffle stockinged feet on sawdust floors. You realize your gondola has become a private balcony overlooking a sonic buffet. The accountant, prompted by the musical smorgasbord, recalls seeing an advertisement for Charles Fay's Liberty Bell slot machine prototype somewhere in the Midway's Games arcade. Historians still argue whether that brass-clanging contraption truly debuted here, or a year later in San Francisco, but the clink of distant cymbals feels like a foreshadowing coin drop, and you mentally promise to keep your spare nickels on a tight leash. The wheel stops midway again, leaving you suspended at just the right altitude to collect melodies without paying entry to any concert tent. Down below, 2 tunes briefly overlap. A Sousa march in C major tangling politely with a Strauss waltz in G. The result is an accidental counterpoint so oddly satisfying that joke number 3 steps in. You propose calling it The Waltzing Post, a title more likely to headline gossip columns than music sheets. Your cabin mates groan with the affection reserved for puns that will never be cited in history lectures. Inside the gondola, the teen tests his map as improvised percussion, flicking its paper folds in time with the piccolo's rat-a-tat. The accountant lends rhythmic support by drumming fingertips on a tin lemonade cap, and soon you've birthed a tiny kitchen utensil orchestra at 200 feet. Hatbox Lady keeps meter with the soft swish of her fan, elevating the ensemble to respectable parlor novelty. You suspect that if Sousa could witness this elevated jam session, he'd either applaud or file for performance royalties. A hush falls when the march's trio section slides into its subordinate key, smooth as velvet poured from a pitcher. The sudden shift makes the lake lamps shimmer more brightly, as though the very pulses of electricity are modulating with the tonic. You take a slow breath and note how your pulse miles along in polite formation behind the trombones. In that steadied cadence, the fair feels suddenly manageable, a series of organized wonders instead of a chaotic avalanche of novelty. Then the moody hush recedes. Cymbals crash, clarinets trill, and the march returns to its opening fanfare. Your gondola begins to descend again, tilting until rooftop cornices climb past the window frame. The popcorn vendor's kettle erupts in a fresh cloud of steam, and blue kernels appear to burst in salute. You swear the trumpet section winks at the kettle with every fortissimo. As earth approaches with deliberateness rather than haste, you muse about the staying power of tunes, how a catchy strain can etch itself into memory stronger than the smell of candied corn, or even the phosphorescent glow of novelty postcards. Boot soles kiss planks again, and for a dizzy second your carbs argue with gravity about whose idea it was to land. The Ferris wheel creaks behind you, parting cough instead of goodbye, while an attendant waves newcomers aboard with the easy flourish of someone herding butterflies. You slip into the nighttime current of fairgoers heading east, ankles brushing hoop skirts, elbows dodging newspaper boys still hawking commemorative Sousa sheet music. A new moon hangs overhead, thin as a thumbprint smudge, leaving Edison's glowing globes to shoulder all the illumination. They oblige, bathing every cornice in a clean chalk-white light that feels both surgical and strangely cozy, like bedtime in a lighthouse. First stop is a stall trumpeting, "Professor Gordon's healthful popcorn salt." A moustached pitchman in linen sleeves demonstrates by sprinkling teal-tinted grains over a steaming kettle. Each kernel pops into improbable pastel, forming a heap that looks like a cloud bank hired to entertain children. He claims the salt purifies the blood, clears the complexion, and encourages polite conversation with difficult relatives. You sample a handful. It tastes like regular popcorn dressed up for Mardi Gras, but the crunch is satisfying enough to suspend disbelief for 2, and maybe 3, more bites. Mid-munch, he mentions that Cracker Jack, the caramel-coated cousin currently debuting 2 stalls down, has just been granted its trademark song lyric, "Buy me some peanuts," and, well, you'll see. Mainstream fact delivered. The 1893 fair is indeed the first public outing for the sticky snack, destined to join baseball and barbershop quartets as pillars of American nostalgia. A teenager beside you tries swapping his blue popcorn for someone else's Cracker Jack prize, proving speculative trade instincts can bloom anywhere, even under cloudless Illinois skies. Footsteps lead you toward a striped awning where a brisk woman in an apple-green hat distributes sticks of something called Wrigley's Colinos Peppermint Chew. She claims it freshens breath, aids digestion, and calms nerves tingled by mechanical contraptions. You accept a sliver. It's brisk enough to convince your molars they've just signed a lease on a glacier. Quirky tidbit arrives when she confides that Mr. Wrigley began by giving gum away for free with baking soda purchases. Apparently the gum was more popular, so he reversed the promotion. You tuck 2 extra sticks in your pocket just in case baking emergencies strike mid-promenade. Street organs crank out a gentle obligato to your stroll. After the ball lilts from one vendor, while a hurdy-gurdy across the lagoon spins Sweet Rosie O'Grady. Their tune overlap feels like accidental harmony composed by caffeine. A lamplighter passes, brass pole in hand, and extinguishes a gas jet whose hiss is now redundant beside electric brilliance. Ahead, a booth promises dentifrice popcorn salt for teeth like porcelain. Same salt, new label. You wonder if by midnight the seasoning will cure baldness, fix squeaky doors, and recite Shelley on command. You decline the sample. Your molars remain alpine enough after Wrigley's expedition, and drift toward the court of honor, where lamps reflect off water in trembling zigzags, as though the lagoon keeps a private diary written in light. A gentle crowd eddies around a phonograph pavilion. Men remove hats. Women hush children, and the attendant lowers a needle onto a wax cylinder. Out pours Enrico Caruso's tenor, captured during a recent session in Milan and shipped here in wooden crates like fragile fruit. The sound crackles, swimming through static, yet the final high note glitters so pure, the health salt pitchman down the lane stops mid-sprinkle to listen. You close your eyes and ride the swell, feeling the note unspool tension from neck to heel. When applause ripples, it rustles the surface of the lagoon too. Even water appreciates a good aria. Nearby, a sign advertises electric massage belts, harness lightning for better posture. Two volunteers sit on stools, leather straps buzzing softly around their torsos. Their hair lifts like dandelion fluff in a breeze no one else can feel. The demonstrator insists 20 minutes of mild current realigns the spine. Observers squint, unconvinced but fascinated. You tabulate the evening's inventions in your head. Popcorn salt, chewing gum, massage belts. And decide the fare is essentially a giant resume for future patent lawyers. You pause at the bridge by the manufacturer's building, watching reflections of pillars plunge like white javelins into black water. A violinist nearby plays On the Banks of the Wabash, and his open case collects pennies, popcorn kernels, and once, a single blue-salted kernel offered by a child convinced generosity matters more than coinage. The fiddler grins, pockets the kernel, and switches to a jig light enough to repel insomnia. The promenade curves, revealing yet another marvel, a row of arc lights strung like luminous pearls all the way to the agricultural building. Their glow is steady, humming softly, and you remember earlier bracelets of lightning from Tesla's coils. Here, though, electricity behaves, shepherded through copper veins to serve beauty instead of spectacle. You let the rhythm of footsteps, string music, and dim canal splashes guide your breathing slower, until even popcorn vendors seem to drift in syrupy motion. Overhead, the new moon surrenders to thin veils of cloud, but the promenade stays bright, outlines softened, edges blurred, a watercolor painted with photons. Arc lamp halos fade as you slip from the promenade into the yawning mouth of the manufacturers and liberal arts building, its iron and glass ribs still warm from a day of humanity exhaling awe. Tonight the hall is mostly shuttered, but merchants linger behind half-drawn curtains, eager to squeeze a few final nickels from wandering insomniacs who confuse closing time with clearance sale. The floor creaks beneath you, 12 acres of parquet that once hosted the world's largest indoor skating rink, until someone noticed exhibitors didn't appreciate barrels of flour gliding off on joyrides. A hand-painted placard promises patriotic gifts priced like pennies, and you wander toward the dim corner it guards. Rows of pocket-sized statues of liberty salute from velvet trays, each torch gilded just enough to wink at passing wallets. Mainstream fact strolls in. These mini statues are cast from molds approved by Frederick Auguste Bartholdi himself, shipped stateside expressly for the fair, and rumoured to contain a whisper of copper shaved from Lady Liberty's real toe. Whether it's myth or marketing, the patina certainly looks authentic, verdigris flirting with moonlight like an old penny practicing its waltz. The vendor, a wiry man with spectacles poised on the very tip of speculation, greets you by sliding a cloth toward the statues as if unveiling state secrets. He names an outrageous price. When you reply that at that rate the statue should light its own torch and direct streetcars home, he laughs counter-offers and the haggling begins, half dance, half duel, wholly addictive. Halfway through your polite skirmish, a soft clang from neighbouring booths drifts over. Two salesmen are arguing about whose sewing machine can embroider faster. One demonstrates by stitching, "Buy American," in cursive so brisk it looks like the cloth is fleeing a gossip scandal. Historians still argue whether this fair truly catapulted US manufacturers past Europe, or merely shouted louder. But the whirring needle nearby sounds confident enough to win any debate on volume alone. Back at Statue Row, you inspect a model with particularly earnest cheekbones, quirky tidbit arrives via the vendor. If you tap the base twice, a compartment pops open, revealing a teensy scroll printed with Emma Lazarus's poem in font so small you'll need a magnifying glass the size of optimism. You test it. Compartment works, scroll intact, patriotism densely packed like fruitcake. The gimmick alone warrants consideration. Besides, your pockets currently contain little more than blue popcorn kernels and a Ferris wheel napkin looking for roommates. Negotiations pause when the gas lights overhead flicker, steam generators throttling down for the night. Shadows stretch, then snap back as reserve circuits take over. Bathing exhibits in a mellow amber glow that flatters every brass hinge and nickel plate. Nearby, a glass case protects a brand new invention. Celluloid collars advertised as washable, unbreakable, and, according to the flyer, impervious to emotional perspiration. You picture Aunt Hester's reaction and consider buying two. The clerk demonstrates durability by bending a sample until it resembles a horseshoe, then popping it straight again with a snap that echoes across the hall like startled applause. Shoppers gasp, wallets shuffle. You stay focused. Copper ladies await a verdict. The vendor restarts his patter, throwing in a miniature torch keychain and free engraving of initials small enough to fit on Liberty's tablet. Joke number 3 taps you on the shoulder. You imagine cramming your entire address onto the thing and mailing it home as the world's heaviest postcard. The mental postage alone is comedic. Still, the perks sweeten the pot. At last you settle on a price 2 dimes gentler than his opening volley. Coins clink, receipt rustles, and your pocket gains a new tenant, the weight of a respectable sandwich. You test the compartment again. Tap, pop, poem. Satisfying click that promises it will survive the streetcar ride, or at least rattle charmingly beside your chewing gum stash. With loot secured, you meander through aisles lit like twilight aquariums. Bicycles with chain guards shaped like swan necks, steam-powered typewriters hammering sample letters to imaginary pen pals, and canning machines sealing peaches so fast you worry a careless finger might end up in preserves labeled human curiosity. A plaque brags that this building spans more floor area than St. Peter's Basilica. The echo under the barrel vault roof concurs, swallowing your footsteps and returning them as soft thunder a second later. You pause at the Kodak counter, where clerks loan box cameras for $1 deposit, encouraging amateurs to transform memories into tiny sepia secrets. Mainstream fact number 2 sneaks in here. George Eastman's "You Press the Button, We Do the Rest" campaign has tripled camera sales since the fair opened, convincing even grandmothers that snapshots are easier than cross-stitch. You consider renting one, but recall your last encounter with lens caps, and decide words will suffice for tonight's souvenirs. A brass-handled door creaks, admitting a draft that brings the outside scent of damp grass and distant lake surf. Merchants snap shut cash boxes, and watchmen patrol with lanterns swinging low, firefly constellations in human hands. The vendor nods you a farewell, one eyebrow raised, as if to say, "Come back tomorrow for the folding Liberty." You promise nothing, but your grin implies strong likelihood. On your way out, a final display arrests you. An illuminated globe slowly rotates inside a crystal tank, showing territories in colored glass. Red oceans ripple with lamp reflections. Green continents glimmer like emeralds set in black velvet. Wind slips in through the vent, rustling Liberty's parchment scroll. Your gaze slides over the white city. Court of Honor pillars now blush peach from idling bulbs. Lagoon flat as sheet glass. Midway tents pulled tight like bedtime blankets. When you realize the Vienna pastry booth down there has dimmed its ovens, and somewhere a sad baker mourns all the croissants that will never fulfill their destiny. Far off, a locomotive bell clangs twice. First call for the midnight milk train to Wisconsin. Its echo skips across the lake, hops the fishery's roof, and lands in your chest with a hollow, homely thunk. You picture crates of cheese bound for breakfast tables, and think how odd that commerce hustles while imagination coasts. The wheel stops one last time at its crown. Silence blooms, wide-petaled. You twist the ginger bottle, taking the final syrupy swig that tastes of warm biscuits, dunked in holiday cheer. A quirky tidbit surfaces from the quieter college boy. He read in Scientific American that ginger was first carbonated as a tonic for seasickness. But entrepreneurs promptly rebranded it as temperance champagne. Proof, he chuckles, that marketing can give even nausea a second act. Below, arc lamps begin winking out row by row, a reverse sunrise orchestrated by linemen eager for bed. As each filament fades, the wheel feels taller, perched on a ladder of its own shadow. You rest your head against the wood panelling, thinking how tomorrow the fair will whir back to life. Kettles popping, Sousa trumpeting, health salts promising immortality. But right now, it's a great mechanical field mouse pausing in the grass. Heartbeat slowed under a hunter-quiet moon. When the remaining boy admits, he spent his lunch money on a patent medicine elixir advertising nasturtium flavour. He pronounces it delicious, though admits he's never knowingly tasted a nasturtium. You raise a ginger ale salute, assuring him bravery comes in many disguises. Sometimes it even tastes like lawn clippings. The wheel eases downward, spokes slicing moonlight into neat ledger lines. Liberty wobbles on the sill, torch tip reflecting the starlight now reclaiming the lagoon. You cradle her in your palm as the gondola kisses the platform. One deep breath, the smell of coal soot, lake mist, and faint candy crust. Then the brass gate slides open. The attendant nods you out with a "pleasant dreams," a benediction disguised as customer service. Footfalls carry you toward the exit arches, where electric letters once blazed, "Welcome," but now glow dim as bedside embers. Streetcar bells clang beyond the fence. You clutch Liberty, pockets clinking with blue popcorn kernels and peppermint sticks, and follow the thinning trickle of visitors past the agricultural colonnade, past statues now cloaked in silver moonlight, toward gates where day's applause has dissolved into train steam and whispery goodnight. The gravel path softens beneath each step, and your pace slackens to the hush of a bedtime heartbeat. Arc lights flicker out behind you, one by one, until only the rivering glow of distant gas lamps drapes the lagoon in sleepy amber. Steam from the milk trains sighs across rails, curling upward like a blanket fluffing itself over the fairgrounds. You pause at the bridge, elbows on cool stone, watching reflections elongate into gentle ribbons then fade as generators finally surrender their last hum. A breeze from Lake Michigan reaches you, feather light and cool, scented with water hyacinth and faint caramel echoes. It slips through your jacket, smoothing the creases of the night, unknotting shoulder muscles that had braced against excitement's happy weight. You close your eyes, letting the pulse of receding footsteps and far-off whistles combine into a slow, even rhythm, like oars dipping through velvet water. In that softened cadence, images glide past. The glowing wheel turning against starlit black, dancers' ankle bells chiming under foreign lanterns, peppermint snow settling on blue salt popcorn, Liberty's hidden poem unfurling beneath copper folds. Each memory lightens, stretching into thin silk threads that drift upward, weaving themselves into the night sky's quiet tapestry. You inhale deeper, counting 4 beats, then let breath flow out longer than it arrived, 6, maybe 7, until lungs feel weightless, a pair of cloudlets moored inside your ribs. The world answers with silence that is not empty, but full of lake hush, canvas tent sighs, and the soft ticking of pocket clocks winding down. With a final glance at the sleeping white city, you turn toward the streetcar stop. Rails glimmer faintly ahead, guiding you like silver lines on a dark page. You step onto the platform, Liberty snug in your palm, and allow eyelids to lower halfway, trusting wheels and gentle steel to lull body and mind homeward. Fair dreams await, spinning slow, ever upward. You lie back now, far from the bustle of marble halls and whispered debates. The memory of warm tiles still lingers beneath your skin, a steady hum of comfort stretching through your limbs. Imagine the faint drip of water echoing in a stone chamber, the soft rustle of towels, the distant sighs of bathers long departed. The steam, gentle and slow, curls through vaulted ceilings and past sleeping statues. It carries no urgency, no voices now, just warmth. Your thoughts drift like perfumed mist through the quiet chambers of time, through long-forgotten jokes and stories half-told, across mosaics faded by 1,000 footsteps, and toward a night sky that's seen it all before. You are still, you are floating. The baths may crumble, the empires may fall, but the simple act of closing your eyes, of resting in a world filled with echoes and heat and old laughter, that remains. So let the warmth hold you a little longer. Let the marble cool around you. Let the night carry you away gently into sleep.